Hello everyone, I am largely unemployed and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program. We have quite a bit to get done today, but before we do any of that, let me just head into the vehicle assembly building and show you guys what I've done to sort out our problems with our life support mod, TAC Life Support. So we've got the adapter ready to go here, and we have installed OBS Life Support. As you can see, it has its own readout here, which I'll explain quickly. OBS adds 3 new resources to the game, namely supplies, mulch, and fertilizer. Your Kerbals consume supplies and produce mulch in a 1-to-1 ratio, so for every 1 supply produced, they produce 1 mulch. This is placed empty, this is placed full, so if all of this were eaten, it would fill up this little pack. Mulch and fertilizer can then be combined in greenhouses, like this one, and there are several other parts like it. There's a science lab shaped one, as well as, I think, smaller ones. Yeah, there we go. And then, of course, we also have observational versions of these 2 parts just for aesthetics. This is just a mini cupola. It's quite cute. But yes, so those so fertilizer and mulch are consumed in these greenhouses in this and produce supplies, which of course then your Kerbals eat and produce more mulch to produce more supplies. Fertilizer is the only thing that you cannot manufacture from what I can tell, and so you need to in fact ship that up. That's the only thing you need to maintain a supply of, from what I can see. It might be possible to do a closed cycle, I just haven't noticed it. Anyway, that is all that we need to know from there. Don't worry about that too much though, because we have a probe to send to Jool and a probe to send to Duna in this episode, as well as perhaps adding another ship to our fleet. See you guys then. And here we are on the launch pad with the rather cool looking Juno 1 rocket. As you can see, it's going to be launched up into the atmosphere and out of it with the Starpoint 1 launch platform that we've been using for previous missions. In fact, actually, it's got the probe itself is all contained within that large fairing up on top there. It's a bit unwieldy looking, I know, but you'll see now as we begin to launch, it is actually aerodynamically stable, despite its rather strange appearance, and I doubt that if this were in real life, that would look quite like that. In fact, actually, payloads are often designed around their fairings and not the other way around. Like, Kerbal Space Program, you build your payload and then you put your fairing around it, but not in real life. In fact, they have very, very strict limits as to weight and width. And a lot of satellites have to sort of deploy because of this, instead of just being launched in their actually ready state. Anyway, there was us jettisoning that rather bizarre-looking fairing and putting out all of our solar panels. This was a very, very expensive mission. A very, very expensive mission. We get back most of the funds from the booster, and as you can see, there's me just flipping it around and getting it to go back to the KSP on its own. But yeah, it's not cheap. It's not cheap doing this. So here's me plotting our course to Jool, and as you can see, we do a bit of refining. But you know what? It's you can't really do much this far out. That's why you need those sort of in-between maneuvers. They do help quite a lot. So we begin to fire up that second stage. It still has a ridiculous amount of delta V remaining, but it's not quite enough to push us all the way through. In fact, actually, those 3 nuclear engines you see there at the back will form the primary propulsion for this craft once it has left Kerbal sphere influence. It's got 2 relay antennas strapped onto the boosters there on the side, and those will actually act as sort of poor man's relays once we have jettisoned everything and we're around Jool. I'm going to sort of let them go even if they have fuel in them, and they'll act as relays. They have solar panels and communication dishes and probes of their own, so they will actually be able to continue to function. And I just figured, why not? Let's make a little satellite network while we're at it. And if we have to ditch them while we're in orbit of the sun, it's not the end of the world either, because they will they'll act as sort of intermediate relays, not very effectively, but it's better than nothing. But yeah, with that done, we need something else to do, which you will find out about right now. We have gone ahead and accepted this contract to place a new surface outpost on Minmus, and that is quite a simple one. Basically, we just need to have a facility supporting 5 Kerbals, has a docking port that can generate power with an antenna, and just land it somewhere on the surface, which shouldn't be too hard to do. I'd also like to grab a contract to place a space station in orbit of the moon, because we have this contract to rendezvous 2 vessels in orbit of the moon, and so we might as well, hit 2 birds with 1 stone, but at present it's not being offered to me. So I'll check back for periodically and see if we can't grab a Mooner contract. That would be great, because if we could stash the Thor 1 lander over at the moon, that would be pretty awesome. Also, I have gone ahead and replaced the Thor 1 lander that had TAC life support with one that now includes the OBS life support mods that we have just added. And that should just ensure that we don't have any issues with the parts not functioning properly. Once we've designed and sent off our Minmus station, we're also going to put together a Duna probe. That is correct. I'm going to send the same probe that I sent to Jool to Duna. It'll be way overpowered for a Duna transfer. The fact that it has an atmospheric lander as well as a standard lander will mean that it will be able to enter Duna's atmosphere safely with some small tweaks. We'll need to add landing legs and retro thrusters to the atmospheric module in order to get it there safely, but it will get there safely nonetheless. And here we are on the launch pad with the core of our Chrono Space, which will be landing on Minmus to set up permanent shop there and hopefully begin to do a whole bunch of cool stuff. Because included, actually let me just zoom in on it, right click aim camera, included in all of this is the survey station. That is right, an exoplanetary survey station. Basically this will allow us to construct spacecraft. I've managed to get the exoplanetary launch pads mod working, and so we're going to have to experiment quite a bit with that. I'm going to have to do that off camera, of course, because it has a whole bunch of, different parts, metal storage. We'll need different kind of drills and refineries and things in order to make the various components needed to build spacecraft off planet. But if we can do that, that means we can launch things from Minmus to go out into the solar system, which would save us a huge amount of money because we no longer need to construct large boosters and things, and since it'll be all made off planet with separate resources, we won't be paying for it anyway because Kerbal Space Program does not model ship upkeep. This is using the Starpoint 1 launch system that we have used previously to put our Jool probe in orbit, and then, of course, it's using its own engines to go further than that. But this is more than enough to get us to Minmus and probably even back again. But I'm going to be using it to put us in orbit now, and future me will talk you through the landing. I think we're going to skip right forward till we're at Minmus. We may need to break halfway in between, though, and go off to Duna with the Mars 1 probe, which will be ending its over there pretty soon. And here we begin the standard ascent, which you guys have seen before, so we're just going to cut straight to orbit. Voila, around Minmus. And as we begin to drop down towards the planet now, firing those thrusters, you'll notice that I'm quite aggressive with my maneuvers, and that was because we had like a ludicrous amount of delta V on this thing. Despite that, however, this craft was rather poorly engineered, which you will soon discover. Definitely not my best attempt at, spoilers, guys, it doesn't go too well. Not my best attempt at spacecraft design, but I am no rocket scientist. I am merely an avid Kerbal Space Program player, and not a particularly great one at that. But there was me using the maneuver nodes to try and, get something out of it. And we actually end up putting this booster back into orbit because I realized we can return that to Kerbin, so there's no point dumping it on the floor. But we can't bring it with us, so we drop this. And I realize I can't move, and I'm sort of puzzling it out now, and I don't know why. Almost as though I've been sabotaged and betrayed.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Yeah, so I forgot to put a probe core and also an antenna on that thing, which is kind of embarrassing. So that entire mission was a huge waste of money. We lost everything, literally all of it. So yeah, we're gonna have to come back and redesign that one. But until then, we still have a probe to send to Duna, and thankfully we should have just enough money to still get it there. And we did not actually have enough money to get it there in the end. We had to take on some more contracts, including putting I think we had to do a magnetic survey of Gilly, which is Eve's moon, which is only like a year from now, so that's going to be quite difficult to complete. We are not in a good position to go to Eve. But anyway, here's us launching the Mars 1 probe. It's a reduced version of the Starpoint 1 launcher, which I am calling the Starpoint 1.5, because as you can see, we take off the boosters because they're necessary and streamline that fairing. This craft also, as you can see, does not use the nuclear engine boosters you previously saw, and you'll find out more about that just now. They're just not required really for this mission, not at all in fact. Alright, there we go. That would be our Duna encounter, and that would cost us a total of 1,191 meters per second to get all the way out there, and we're only going to get there in 389 days. So I think we're not even going to get anywhere near Jool. We get to our Jool rendezvous, or our maneuver change by that time, and Jool's very far away. Yeah, we're definitely going to need a relay probe. That is quite distant. So what we're going to do is head back into the Space Center and send up one of our utility craft with an engineer on board. And he's going to, do all of our transferals. So I will see you guys once we're in rendezvous with this craft. Anyway, here's that craft all the way up in orbit. It's rather janky looking, I know, but it is pretty effective, actually. It definitely has Delta V issues. It doesn't really get enough. We launched this on the old Antilles 5 launch platform with the one we had the whole bunch of small boosters strapped on it. So it's pretty bad on the fuel efficiency, I must say. Like, I need to redesign this craft. It's an old one. But here's us trying to sort of jimmy ourselves on and doing a terrible job of it. Even close the solar panels on the wrong side of the craft to try not to break them off and just completely luck it out and manage not to break them. But we do get a secure connection, and we're going to get Bill out. Is that Bill? I can't see on my tiny little display window. But we get our Kerbal out, and he's going to float on over and attach that that's a radar dish. But first we try and see if we can't link up these things to transfer some fuel in there, because I think I had like 40 meters per second left in this craft. Not enough to do any real flying, because I was going to try and rescue a Kerbal simultaneously while up here, but no luck. Oh, that's something else we'll be doing next episode, is rescuing that Kerbal. So here's me just sort of dragging and dropping the antenna along the craft, which is kind of the workaround using Kerbal attachment system, and I just try to get a better position, and voila, I find one. Quick saving every time I do it, just in case we cut the craft in half like last episode. But yeah, then I realize I'm still connected. Whoops. So we need to hop our engineer out again and get him to go and decouple those pieces, fighting with the camera as always. And yeah, that's pretty much that. So we just fire retrograde with what remains. I think we end up ditching that booster stage, which actually has parachutes that it can land on. We're also going to fire that booster back into the atmosphere to get the money back. And we had just enough Delta V to drop ourselves into the atmosphere for a capture. So these guys are going to land safe and sound, no worries, nothing to go wrong. They totally didn't crash. I had to quick save and do it again. Nothing, never. And with our spiffy new relay antenna attached, we can finally get this craft going on its way. So we need to set up a maneuver node. I believe we'll need to fire from this side of Kerbin. Can we try and avoid a mun encounter? Damn it, we got a mun encounter. We can't afford a mun encounter, because that is going to mean we can't see what our final trajectory is going to be like. There we go. We can go out that way, but that's probably not the right direction. Or at least not the perfect direction. You know, we could do better. So, you know, because we're all skew now. That doesn't work. How are we going to do this? Alright, well, I'm going to crack that code, and then I'll let you guys know what I come up with. And there we go. We have our Juno encounter, which will arrive at in 363 days. So not exactly a quick tour, but we will be getting there. So we're just going to quickly fast forward until such time as we are outside Kerbin's sphere of influence, so I can set up our secondary maneuver node. There we go, and make the alarm for it, and do all the little things we got to do. So we're going to add a maneuver right there, and focus view on Duna, and do this. Oh, we're actually in a pretty good orbit. I'd like to come in a retrograde orbit versus Ike. And the reason for that is quite simple, is I'd like to use Ike for a little bit of a gravity assist. And in fact, actually, if we can drop our first lander off at Ike, that'd be great, because that just saves us, you know, having to fly it past. So now with that, we need to push ourselves out slightly. If I can just grab that maneuver node. Yeah. Damn, it's really finicky, isn't it? You know, because something else is moused over it at present. I think there's something behind it. I don't know, but it's being weird. I was also clicking in the wrong place. There was our maneuver node. Okay, so I had the exact encounter I was looking for. This is not a retrograde orbit around Ike, but it will do the trick. There we go. Okay, so now we are going the wrong way around Ike. That's the correct way to be. Can we get that a bit closer? No. Yes. Okay, there we go. So we're going. It's not much of a gravity assist. Ike is very small. But it will allow us to snap ourselves just a little bit. It gives us a little, as you can see, it bends our orbit ever so slightly, just coming past it like that. And for 10 meters per second, you know, gaining probably about 100 or so from that little snap is definitely worth the effort. So we're just going to bring ourselves right over here and snap the craft into that position. That's done. That's done. So now we just wait 179 days for it to get there. In fact, I'm going to add a little node for it now. We're going to do the maneuver node. Yes, Mars 1. We want to come in, let's make it 1 hour before. And we're going to add the alarm. There it is, Mars 1 coming in. And then Juno 1 is 230 days roughly later, which is ridiculous. 180 days. It's a number of days later. Which, in fact, actually, we can go to Dres and Eve before we can even go to move our Juno node in the correct orientation. So it's going to be a while before we get there. Elu is way out of our reach. We're not going to be trying that. We could try a Moho probe, although we already have a Moho probe, Archer 3. So it'll be interesting to see when that gets there. But we will be dealing with that in the next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. I will see you then. Cheers.